The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Amen. 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 His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you, in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Amen. 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 and the children, and the children. His presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming, and you're going, and you're weeping, and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. 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 Nobody like you, Lord. 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 May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and the children, and the children. May His presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you, He is with you, in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming, and you're going, and you're weeping, and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 He is for you. Before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you, He is with you, in the morning, in the evening, in the coming, and you're going, and you're weeping, and rejoicing. He is for you, He is for you, He is for you.
If you have your Bibles with you today, I'd ask you please to turn with me to John chapter 21. John chapter 21. I want to talk to you a little bit this morning about detours. Because you see, that's kind of what we're going through right now, isn't it? It's a detour. For those who know me well, mainly my wife and my son, my daughters too, but we didn't have GPSs when my girls were growing up and traveling with us. But my son and my wife have had the privilege of traveling with me whenever we had to go someplace, and I'm using a GPS. I don't like Google GPS, by the way. I just can't stand it because Google GPS always wants to try to give me a better route or a different route. And so I'll be riding along and think I'm going exactly where I need to go, and all of a sudden the route will change. And then I'm all in a panic about, why is it making me get off on this exit? Why is it taking me down all these back roads? Why did you let me stay on the 4-lane? And I just go through a lot of lamenting over the frustrations about the Google Maps taking me down a direction I don't want to go. But there's another situation that the GPS provides that also frustrates me. And that's detours when there is trouble ahead. And I find many times when that detour comes up on the GPS, I think I ignore it because I know where I'm trying to go and I know how I want to get there, and I don't want anything distracting me. I want to go my own way, and I'll just have to wait if I have to wait, but I'm going to go my own way. Don't detour me. Because I look at the times we're in right now, I think God's kind of in the detouring business every now and then. And he's not doing it to frustrate us. He's doing it because he sees what's up ahead and he has a plan that's going to be for our good, but it may take us in a way we don't want to go. And I wonder how often we may find ourselves frustrated. And instead of saying God has a plan and that plan is good, and so therefore I will yield to the detour he wants me to take, I wonder how many times we find ourselves like me, frustrated and upset and disappointed because I was going a certain way and all of a sudden this detour is here now and it's taking me in a way I don't want to go. John chapter 21, we find Peter. And Peter found himself facing a detour. So you see, the disciples knew that Jesus had a plan, and they knew that that plan was good, but they thought the plan was one thing, but yet the plan was something else, as we saw last week in the Easter service message. And so when that detour came, Peter was a lot like us. He chose to go his own way. Let's look at that. In John chapter 21, the first verse says, afterward. Now, wow, afterwards just like therefore, right? So I got to go back and see what it's there for. Well, if we go back and look in the latter part of chapter 20, you'll find that after the resurrection of Jesus, what he had done, he showed himself to his disciples. He also showed himself to the guy that's a lot like you and I, Thomas, who doubted. Thomas said, you got to show me, you got to prove to me that you are indeed the Messiah. And you know what I like about God? He's big enough, right, that he's not threatened when you say, I don't know what you're doing here. I don't know that I can trust what's happening. He can handle that. And so what Jesus did is he showed Thomas, see, here's the nails in the side. Here's where I was pierced. And as a result of seeing, Thomas found himself believing. But we find in John chapter 21, we find that Peter says here, afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples, where? By the Sea of Galilee. This Sea of Galilee also at Tiberias is actually the same place where the 5,000 were fed. So they found themselves back in a place where Jesus had done amazing miracles, and we find them here now this way. It says, and it happened like this. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee. These guys are actually called the sons of thunder. Now, if you think about that, they were a pair. And two other disciples, and Peter says, I'm going out fishing. What was he saying here? Peter was saying, I'm so frustrated with this detour, I'm done. I'm going back to what I used to do. Because Peter was a fisherman. Peter abandoned everything that he had done to follow Jesus. And so now he finds himself in a detour. He doesn't like what's happening. And so he goes back to the things he used to do. And I wonder how often are we the same way? We find ourselves in a detour. And instead of saying, wow, I wonder what God's going to do in this situation, we find ourselves leaning towards saying, what's the use? I'm done. I'm going to do my own thing. So he says, I'm going fishing. Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. Always have followers. So they went out, they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, verse 4. Now, wow, watch this. They went last night, it's now early in the morning. That means they had been there for a long time. Jesus stood on the shore, but his disciples did not recognize that it was Jesus. He called to them, friends, have you caught any fish? In other words, is what you're trying to do working for you? Now, when you and I say that to someone, we would say it sarcastically, wouldn't we? Hey, how's that working out for you? But I submit to you that what Jesus is saying here is there anything I can do to help you? I know you've been working on this situation all night. I know you're weary. I know you're frustrated because you went back to doing what you used to do because you knew how to do it and you knew what to expect. So now here you are at a detour. You're confused and you're frustrated. You're going back to what you're used to do, and that's not working either. And you know what? I'm here still walking alongside you, not to say see what's happened to you, but let you know I want to see you through it. No, they answered. Verse 5, we've caught nothing. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. Can you imagine? Here these fishes are. They've been working all night long. It's now morning. This is not an easy job. They're tired. They're even more frustrated. And all of a sudden, this person, they really don't even know who it is. Some guy on the shore, about 100 yards away, they say, is shouting out to them, throw the net on the other side and you'll catch something. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, that's the fancy way of saying John, by the way. John was always known as the disciple who Jesus loved. So John, writing this account, is speaking of himself in the third person as he says this. Said, Peter, that's the Lord. You see, when God does something in our life, there's a unique way that if we're sensitive to him, to know God is working in this situation. And more, I'm trying to allow myself to be sensitive in the midst of the situation we're going through. When I'm trying to do the things that I can normally do and they still sometimes don't work and I get frustrated, and then somehow it works out, to be very careful to say, what's God doing right now? I want to look for him in this detour instead of complaining about the detour. I want to see his hand in action as I find myself looking for action. So John says here, it's the Lord. As soon as Peter heard him say this, the word says here, he wrapped up his outer garment around him that he had taken off, jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat. Peter, for those of us out here who know about this, pretty much all of us at our fellowship, I submit to you, Peter must have been born in January. Because here he is, he doesn't just stay on the boat, he's got to jump off, right? So he's wrapped up his cloak around him, he's jumping off into the water, swimming ahead of the boat, and the rest of the disciples are rowing behind him, trying to keep up with him. You know, he's zealous, right? He's all dramatic. He goes from, I'm angry and I'm not believing this is going to work out, to, oh my gosh, here's the Lord, I'm going to be the first to jump out of the boat. Oh my gosh. So Peter was born in January. It's the Lord. He moved on. Verse 9, when they landed, they saw a fire burning with coals, and fish were on it, bread. One commentary said that the embers that would have been used for this, to be able to create this fire, would have been the same type of embers that would have been at another scene. And that scene would have been found, for example, in Mark chapter 14, because in that scene, that was where Peter found himself once again around a fire. And at that point, he found himself around a fire where a little girl said, "Aren't you that guy that was following Jesus?" Zealous January Peter, once again, had already told Jesus, "I will never deny you. I'm with you 100%. But yet now when Jesus finds himself arrested and almost to the point of his crucifixion, when Peter's asked, "Weren't you the guy that was with the Lord 3 times?" The Bible says that he denied him. He says, "I don't know that man." In fact, he got angry. He says, "I don't know that man." So I wonder if when Peter hit the shore and he saw the burning embers and he smelled the aroma of the fire, I wonder if he might have had a flashback moment. The last time I was here, I wasn't where I needed to be. But yet I find myself now here with Jesus. So it says here in verse 9, when they landed, they saw the fire burning with the coals, the fish on it, and some bread. And Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you've caught as well." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat, dragged the net ashore. Now this is a net that only took 3 or 4 people to drag in. Peter's dragging in by himself. "I can do this. I've got you, Jesus. Just come, have some breakfast." None of the disciples was there to ask him, "Who are you?" Although they knew it was the Lord, they couldn't believe their own eyes. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and he did the same with the fish. And this now was the 3rd time Jesus had appeared to his disciples. So they're there eating. I consider this would have been an awkward moment. They're eating the bread and the fish. They're having a flashback, remembering all the things that have transpired. I don't know why they didn't say, "Hey, Jesus, it's good to see you." But they were, like a lot of times like we are, they were, quite frankly, blown away. And then Jesus does something. You see, the Lord has a way of addressing the elephant in the room. For those of you who may not know what the elephant in the room is, it's that difficult conversation that you need to have, but you won't have it. It's the conversation of the couple that's estranged, need to have, but instead of having it, will allow themselves to discuss divorce instead of reconciliation. It's that situation that might be in a family with a restrained relationship with children. And you need to have the conversation about the father being more engaged in the family's life, or the wife being, the mother being more, or the children being more. There's some dynamic there that we don't want to talk about, and really that would be, if we would have that conversation, that critical conversation, that would be the healing point, that would be the deliverance, but we're not going to address that elephant in the room. We just walk around it. Jesus is always going to address the elephant in the room. Not to condemn us, but to deliver us. Let's look. Verse 16. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these fish, the bread, what you have been working for?" "Yes, Lord." Now, be careful here. When Jesus said that to him, he said, "Do you agape love me?" That's the love that God has for us. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's a self-sacrificing love. It was the love that Jesus took to the cross. Peter answers, "Yes, Lord, I like you a lot." Because the word he used was phileo love. It's where we get Philadelphia from, brotherly love. So Jesus asked him, "Do you love me to the point that you would lay your life down for me?" But yet Peter answered, "Lord, you know I like you a lot." Jesus says, "Then feed my lambs." Now, we'll talk about what he's speaking about here. Again, he says in verse 16, Simon, son of John, do you love me to the point of laying down your life for me? He answered again, Lord, you know I like you a lot. I like you an awful lot. He says, and I want you to take care of my sheep. The third time, he said, son of John, Simon, son of John, do you really like me a lot? Peter was hurt. But hear me, he was not hurt in the context of being condemned. That's how we do each other. He was hurt in the context of being convicted. Because you know something? It's conviction that leads to deliverance, not condemnation. He said, when we dress the elephant in the room, we often want to beat down. We want to condemn. That won't deliver. It's conviction of the heart that delivers. And that's what Jesus was doing here with Peter. He caught him in his detour moment because he was on the wrong path. And he brought him back to note this. He brought him back to what he had called him to initially. Because you see, Peter was a fisherman that Jesus had called from fishing to ministry. Peter had chosen in his frustration to detour back into what he used to do. But Jesus is doing what? Calling him back into what? Ministry. To his appointment. To his assignment. Because he said, you know what? I can work on you and I can work with you. I want you to be to the point where you will love me to laying your life down for me. And as I think about that, I think, you know, that's the love that God wants us to have for our families. To the point of where we are willing to lay our life down for one another. Whatever your conviction is, your call that God has planted in you, He wants you to give it everything that you have. And what you're missing, what you're lacking, where you fall short, He will shore up and make sure that that purpose is fulfilled. You have to go back and look at something here real quick before we leave. He did not say when he had this breakfast, he didn't say, oh, that what you worked on and that fish that you, no, he could have told them, hey, don't worry about fishing, come on in. I've got fish for you already here. That's how we do a lot of times with our kids and with people. We don't want to let them work. Because they might fail. If he throws the net on the other side, what if nothing comes back out? Throw the net in faith. Bring back whatever comes from it. And then use it. It wasn't about, was it enough? It was about that they obeyed. And Jesus will use your effort. And He will make up the difference. They had some fish, but He had a fire. They had something ready, but He was already prepared. Even at bread, He completed the meal as He addressed the elephant in the room. So Jesus could deal with the fact that Peter liked him a lot, because he knew he now had a vessel that he could bring back to service. He goes on to say, verse 18, Very truly, I tell you, when you were young, Peter, you dressed yourself. You went where you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go. That humbling prophetic statement was, because I don't know if you knew this or not, Peter did go on to be back in the ministry. It was very influential in the Roman era, in the Roman society, with establishing a church. He did that, as Jesus had said, built that upon a rock, Petros, that the gates of hell would never prevail against. But that Peter, the same Peter, that was at a fireside where a little girl just said, "Aren't you the one?" And he denied him 3 times to a little girl. That same Peter, when it was time for his death, because he would not deny Jesus again, he was crucified. That's this arm stretched out that's being spoken of here. That's this being clothed and led where you did not want to go here. Historians say that when it was time for Peter to be crucified, he said, "I don't deserve to die like my Lord." And he was crucified upside down. You see, when God gets on the inside of us and we allow that transition of light love to agape love to overtake us, there's a boldness, there's a strength, there's a conviction that nothing will deter you from your call. When God addresses the elephant in the room and restores our walk through conviction, not condemnation, there is a strength that will allow us in our life walk to make radical change that'll turn this world upside down for Christ. I'm encouraged today to start considering my detours a little differently as I look at this message. I am convicted, not condemned, convicted of where am I in the like a lot category instead of truly loving the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my strength. And putting that agape love into action. I think I'll have a different perspective on detours in the future. Because God uses those not to harm us, but to give us hope for a future. I guess detours are a lot like plans, aren't they? Because a detour is a route, it's mapped out, so therefore it's a plan. And maybe I'll start thinking about when my life detours come up. Maybe I'll start reflecting more. Maybe you will. On Jeremiah 29, and I'll paraphrase it. I know the detour I have for you, declares the Lord. One not to harm you, but one to give you hope, to prosper you for a future. Maybe we'll consider as we go through this time to view our detours a little differently. Because in detours, God works for the good of those who love the Lord, like Peter, and are called according to his purpose. Let's consider God's detours a divine plan for our good.